Well, it's the thing that I've been thinking about most, but I mean, if you got something else, we could do that.
No, that's fine. We can
Here's this agile thing with Mike Markey and Matt Beam.
this thing again. This here thing.
Well, I mean, I really feel like the like we'll be talking about this for a while. It really feels like next level stuff. You know, I've been reading the Carlotta Perez book and the Mick Kirsten book on Project to Products and Team Topologies, and it really feels like it's sort of there's a larger historical pattern happening here that the IT world is sort of caught up in, and it's kind of like the companies. So some companies have figured it out, right? Like PayPal and Etsy and Amazon and Facebook, and some companies have not figured it out, right? And I think we know who they are. And the companies who don't figure it out in time are going to end up, they're just not going to be able to compete. But it's not like we're guessing, right? It's not like, you know, we've got enough evidence and data and experience reports and all that stuff. And now we've got theory behind it too, right? To understand, okay, this explains what we're seeing. And once you extrapolate that, you can see, oh, we've got to get teams that have the right size problems to think about, right? And we've got to, you know, pushing the decisions down to the lowest possible level. Like that's not an optional thing. That's not like a thing you do to be cool. It's how you go faster with quality. So anyway, I'm just fascinated. I'm a big picture guy, obviously, you know that. I'm just fascinated by how the whole thing fits together. So,
Okay, yeah, no, it's definitely cool. I've just started with my new clients, so I'm getting to know a bunch of new teams, and they are building structures, and that's it's all keenly interesting.
Let's talk about your new. Do you want to?
We don't have to. I mean, I can talk abstractly. I don't want to go into too much.
Of course, because this is a podcast, and it could be viewed by the public, and
it could also be years before anyone sees it. So, what client? Just never know. I dare you to find out. No.
Yeah. So what can you share in terms of high level? So they're creating new teams. Are they creating team structures? Are they scaling? What are they doing?
Some of them are brand new teams. Some of them are, like they took scattered folks and brought them together. One thing they did try to do is build cross-functional teams. They took what used to be siloed layers. They used to write very much back-end stories, front-end stories, testing stories. Yeah. And now they're mashing them all together into teams with all those roles represented. And now the trick is getting the product people to write stories aimed at vertical slices of execution. Yeah. Because they've grown so accustomed to separating them.
Yeah, writing functional stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of their big challenges is they've had they got used to very detailed architectural specifications or design specs, like the down to the pseudocode level, like so much detail in there that you almost look at them and say, why didn't you just write the code?
Is it so that they'll get the performance that they need, or are they because this follows a pattern I've seen places where they'll prematurely converge upon a solution, right? They'll assume that, of course this is going to be valuable because question mark. Is that the pattern?
Well, not only is it's going to be valuable, but this is how we're going to do it, because and that's why we have architects to envision these grand solutions. So we have to give them time to do their envisioning. And that's not that different from let's give time for someone to do a design and let's review it and let's all understand it before we start even working on it. So the big challenge with the teams is getting them to a level of comfort with taking that first step, right? Without necessarily knowing what the ground looks like underneath their feet.
Yeah. So. First step towards product first.
Yeah. When we're trying to re-gear them to think outcome, not output, right? They were very focused on keeping everyone busy. That's what leads to these teams to go, oh, well, this is a front end team. So all the front end people are always doing front end stuff, which is the most vital thing that front end person can do, is look at the front end of things and work on the front end of things.
From a front end perspective, I'm sure that's absolutely true.
And it's been absolutely true from the back end too. The back end person just looks at the back end, and I now.
Well, where are the customers who are buying front ends and back ends?
Oh, there aren't any. And then so where they've fallen down, as many organizations have, is at the point that the two sides come together, or when they realize front end got out ahead of back end, or vice versa, and we don't have a complete solution. And I'm just talking about these two elements. There's other elements of the whole thing, right? This is just two of many.
Yeah.
And it's like when they get out of sync with each other, you don't have complete delivery. So we're getting them back into this mindset of, no, this is working together. They even, because they were separated out like this, it was easy to do velocity for a person, because one person did a front end element. They decided what the story pointing on that was, how many of those can they do. And so it was not uncommon for a single person to be on the hook for 20, 30 story points. Right.
I mean, maybe we should bonus them based on that. They get to 40. Did. They get a boat.
Actually,
they did. Yeah, they did.
They were reviewed based on story points delivered.
Yeah.
And that is again, breaking old models and saying this is not, while it seemed like a good idea at the time, you can imagine how they thought it was a good idea at the time.
Sure.
Right. Where you get in there and you say, well, I want my best people working on this solution. I want them focused on delivering this stuff. I don't want them distracted by stuff. And this feels like I'm being productive. And then other things happen.
Hold on 1 second. Oh, my apologies. This is my fault. Yes, we are.
And we're back. We are back again. Back. And I'm watching your little voice modulator modulating.
Moving. Yeah.
Look at it going.
That's weird.
Look at you with all your talking.
I don't even know what happened there. So, so you've got a bunch of, I would just tell you something I saw relatively recently. I was helping a company do PI planning, and they had, did I tell you this already? They had, the way you do PI planning is you've got one group and you make one plan. And they had a set of teams that were product teams. And then they also had other functional teams, right? For like specific, channels, or like basically their attributes, stuff like accessibility. And so what they had was, instead of having one group and one plan, they had the product teams plan. And then they also had a plan for this group that was going to come in, and a plan for this group that was going to provide a part of the solution. So what they really had was, the assumption was that if this group did this, and this group did this, and this group did this, all simultaneously, it would add up to a product.
It would all just magically assemble.
It would happen somehow, but what you'd notice is that it was so fucking complicated to talk about this stuff. This is why I'm fascinated by Team Topologies, because it really crystallized, oh, that's what's happening. Right? We've created such a level of complexity in a many-to-many relationship, and like it's just it's too much, man. Like you need a quantum computer, or we need bigger brains or something. But if you're going to do that approach, like you can't use humans. We're not smart enough. You need to simplify the process.
Yeah,
that's kind of what struck out to me.
I could see that. Yeah, it's. I think a lot of this complexity gets into the actual rollout of product once you get into a complex system, like especially if you've got concerns over client data, as you always should, but sometimes there's regulatory concerns that seep into the mix, putting extra levels of angst on the whole process of putting stuff out into the world. And I think that because of that, organizations through a series of steps trying to contain risk, maybe reacting to issues that actually manifested and making rules against that stuff, have now basically shackled themselves to a painful release process, right?
Yeah.
And that we come in and we're like, we're going to make teams go faster, and they're going to get stuff ready to ship and ready. And it's like, yes, it's ready to go into that funnel of things that will eventually be deployed,
Right.
because our deployment process has now become a journey in its own right.
Complicated, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this is so many clients. This is like the
It's most of them.
yeah.
Honestly, it's most companies that have been around for more than 30 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who have sort of grown up in the old era of technology. And it's
And
super interesting.
right. And have grown up with that whole risk management notion. And yeah. So how, like, you guys are probably facing that as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the question of what does done mean, and it's weird, as I look back on all this stuff I've done, like you can get people on board with the idea that you should have a system and boundaries on the system, and you should make stuff go as quickly as you can through the system, but many times they don't, the where they draw the boundaries are not wide enough, right? And especially in the back end of that, it's like, oh, okay, like you just said, code is in staging or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we measure your cycle time against. That's where you validate the value. And it's like, read a lot of books that say you don't really know anything until a customer looks at it.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's not done. You don't know what the cycle time is, and you didn't validate the feedback. You didn't get any feedback. So it's like they're not getting right. They've got the car, but they haven't put the steering wheel on it. Like you're so close.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
not so close, but like you're not. Yeah.
is cycle time measured to deployment, or is cycle time measured to when, I forget where I thought it was open to interpretation where you draw the line.
It definitely is, right. I think so. I guess what I would say is if you don't measure it to production, then you're leaving stuff out. Right. So you still don't know how long it takes to go from idea to customer. And that's really what you need to know, right? That's the real end.
Mm-hmm.
Like there could be value in measuring it within the system, but then, you're measuring a sub part of the system, and like you be careful optimizing that, right? Because then you're locally optimizing, and there's a whole pitfall there.
Yeah. Though, I think we have to take in, you kind of got to meet the client where they are. Like if they're not ready to deploy yet, there's no reason to stop learning to develop better.
Totally.
Right? And so we take it in stages, and that's why we often have a team coach that's working with getting that, but then we also have organizational coaching where we're trying to help the system along, and then maybe we even have folks at the DevOps side of things who are helping them get getting the final ducks in a row, the actual deployment of ducks in a row.
That sounds challenging.
Yeah.
Deploying ducks.
Or whatever you're going to measure your worth in.
Or whatever. Exactly. Yep.
So in your team topology investigations, like has there been anything that's really standing out right now that you're applying to your current problem space?
So I've really been leaning into the idea of cognitive load. The problem is, it's like, what does that mean to a company, to a client? It's sort of an abstract. I think it's one of these things. It feels like one of these things where it's hidden to you until somehow you're able to see it, and then you see it everywhere. It's like you buy a yellow Volkswagen, and suddenly they're everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Not a great analogy, but like I've been in some of these meetings where people were confused, and they're like, oh, this other thing. Oh, hold on. I don't want to switch context on you, but I have to talk about this other thing. I think that's really, and it what's interesting to me is that it's like the intersection of this system that we have built, or that, that like we build these processes and roles and artifacts and cadences and teams and all this stuff. And then we expect people to run them. And it's the interface between the system and the people, the individual people, that is sort of the breakdown here, right? It's a very impressive system. We understand it's rational. It's very, totally logical. The problem is it's not suited to the people that to humans who are trying to do the work.
Right.
That's really the thing that strikes me.
Well, it's almost like we built the system for ideal conditions or ideal players, but we're working with very often systems that have been broken, and maybe even people who have been broken. Right.
Deep.
And so there's a, you talk about cognitive load, and the image that comes to mind is burnout and multitasking and things of that nature.
Yes.
And I mean, I've had people who, you get a lot of times in an organization, you get subject matter experts who are like the sole source of information in an area.
Yep.
Right. And if the organization needs a lot of that person is constantly being hit with requests. Oh, we need your help with this. Oh, we need your help with this. This group needs your help with this. Oh, hey, stop doing that. Do this.
Yep.
Do the one thing that you do.
Yep.
And it almost starts feeling like, hey, monkey, time for a backflip.
Yeah.
Right.
So and it's you can see we didn't just like wake up and create these systems out of nothing. We evolved them from a physical labor context, right? Taylor 100 years ago was like watching people build boats and like taking down cycle times for putting planks on. Those underlying assumptions have sort of stuck with us, but now we're doing stuff where it's not obvious.
Yeah. And it's not analogous. We're not putting planks on boats anymore.
Right.
Because
it went from a physical, like obvious, you can put your hands on it domain to a knowledge-based, abstract, can't see it domain. Mm-hmm. You've got the sort of like the equivalent. You got 100 years ago, they got one guy building one boat. Okay, fine. Now, because it's knowledge, you can't see how many boats you're trying to build. You got one guy trying to build 6 boats, right? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, and we're building specialized boats. We're building boats for unique purpose. We're not building the same boat over and over again, because software, once you build it once, you can sell that software again. That model of the boat is done. Right. But now we need a boat that can go into shallower water. We need a boat that can go faster. We need a boat that can carry more load. It's just however far you want to take this analogy, right?
Yeah. Software is infinitely malleable, right? So it's way more complex. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is that we're essentially reinventing the wheel constantly. We will reuse components as much as we can, and that's where the whole software engineering and stuff has grown into. But eventually, yes, this is a motor you can put on a boat. You can put this on a lot of boats, but sooner or later you need a bigger motor, or maybe you need a different kind of prop, or maybe you need you've got different conditions, and its software is uniquely capable of bending to that need.
But the human input of horsepower doesn't necessarily scale as easily, right?
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Let's go there.
Well, I'm just go ahead.
No.
I just to complete the thought. So what you're saying is that you had a boat and you built the boat, and that was what it was.
Yeah.
And the equivalent now is there's no limit to what you can build, but it takes the scale of effort has to scale up commensurately.
Yeah.
And we haven't taken that part into account, apparently.
And we're trying to. But we tried so hard to have somebody walk up with a clipboard and say, it takes us 2.5 days to build a boat. Here is a specialized boat. Go build that. Mm-hmm. And it's just, well, hold on. How is this boat different? This boat is more complicated. This now has 2 hulls. There's there's something else going on here. We build sailboats or we build motorboats. Now you want a sailboat. That is a completely different animal.
Right.
We need to adapt our processes, and project management was not. Project management would do that by going, well, okay, fine, I'll put some contingency into the plan.
Yeah.
To give
Just pad your estimate, boat builder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you an extra day.
Yeah. We're building them out of metal now. I mean, they were wood. We're good at that. Now you want metal, and you're having me estimate this as though I'm building a wooden boat, but I'm building it out of steel. And
yeah, it's really hard to estimate the creative process, or to, it's just like, in some sense, what we're doing is ineffable, right? You just don't know. You learn about the work by doing it. And until then, who knows?
And there's so many people who are resistant to that notion. It's like, well, that's okay because I can help. I'll sit and watch you build that boat.
Let's read it. Like, can I get a definition on the word help?
Yeah.
And judges.
And management. Who's here to help?
So the other thing that I liked about Topologies is they've identified 4 different types. So mostly they're one type of team, the stream-aligned product teams, but they've got 3 other types of teams, enabling, complicated subsystem, and platform. And then there's 3 interaction modes: collaboration, something as a service, and facilitating. And that's it. And I was struck by that because every place I've been, there's been this assumption that, like, oh, we should talk more. I mean, everybody hates meetings, but the idea of saying, this is the identity of this team, this is the identity of this team, this is the mode in which they will collaborate and nothing else, feels weird, honestly, because you'd say more communication. I've said more communication is always good. I was wrong about that.
Too much communication. There is over communicating,
and the wrong type of communicating. Right, it's not helpful to say or to hear that in this context, right? Because it doesn't move us forward. So they've defined that pretty solidly, which I think is super interesting.
Okay. I mean, when you say you've got stream-aligned teams or you got enablement teams, like stream-aligned, there's a definite destination, a definite output. We have we know what we're building, or we know the lessons we're trying to learn, the experiments we're trying to perform. We have a plan.
It's a product team, basically.
Okay.
So, and this is most of the types of teams. It's because, mostly you're building product, and so most of your effort will go into the product. And so these would be the typical teams you'd see in a value stream, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Stream aligned is what they call them.
And that would, that's a well-worn path. I mean, I think you would say, well, we know how to do those.
Yeah, totally.
The organization may not know how to do that, but there are those who know. And
that's I think well-established pattern is a great way to describe it. Yeah.
Okay. But then we look at this concept of an enabling team.
Yeah.
So they're laying the groundwork for somebody else. Is that what we're looking at?
So this is a team that exists to enable another team. Mm-hmm. There's something that the stream-aligned team needs but doesn't have. So I guess this would be a particular skill. I'm not really sure. That's a good question. Of what are some examples, real life examples of enabling teams?
Okay. Well,
essentially, it enables the product team to do something, but
well, we used to talk about, and let me know if I'm going in the wrong direction. Like, don't let me go the wrong direction for too long. But a team of architects who's sort of defining the pathway into a new design space, or we're setting up the guardrails of where the teams, like, we want to give the teams freedom to create, but they got to stay in more or less in these lanes. So we're going to define a little more of the architecture.
Complicated subsystem team.
Okay,
that's an interesting question. I hadn't thought about that. Would the architecture group be one of these types of teams, and if so, which one would they be?
Or is it an API team? Their role is to create the libraries that the other teams will use to access different things, like a third party, perhaps a third party interaction. We want to use this third party tool So we've got a team that will build our interface to that third-party tool instead of everyone else having to do their own.
That might be a complicated subsystem.
Gosh darn
game.
it. Okay. Well, then
I'm not an expert on this, but I don't know. I'm just, yeah.
Well, okay, then what is the quality other than they make it possible for other people to do things? What other qualities of an enablement team are there? Maybe that would help.
Yeah. We should probably look that up, actually.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
What about platform? Can we describe what a platform is?
Platform I know all about. So
Awesome.
platform is an internal product, essentially. So, and it doesn't have to be complicated, but it's the basis so the Streamline teams are building product. They've got their eyes on the external users. Everything that they do is for outcomes for that. There's a baseline that they need to build on top of, right? And so this could be various types of things. It could be I don't know, for deployment, or I don't know, whatever. But the idea is, the difference here is that it's conceived of as a product team, and it has internal product management. And the way that I think the key here, practically speaking, is you basically, developer experience is a big part of this. So what you would do is you'd ask, let's say you have a platform team, right? And you have a number of stream-aligned teams, product teams. You would survey them and say, what's it like to build your code? What's it like to automatically test your code? What's it like to deploy it, right? And if it sucks, you don't have to use that product. We're not telling you, right? So the product management, I think they do this because it's so easy to tell people you're just going to use this tool and that's too fucking bad. Mm-hmm. Right. But that's the old model. You're not really engaging people at that level. Right. You have to give them something they're excited to use and that they can provide the platform team feedback on to make it better, because it's a product that you're choosing like any other product, because it's your best option, really.
Is that leading you back to cognitive load then? Because it's like you're expending so much energy just in doing your work or enabling yourself to do your work that, well, we're going to take some of that and simplify your world a little bit. We're going to say, here, we're using this tool. We're going to use AWS to do the databases instead of everybody having their own SQL, MySQL, whatever, or we're standardizing on a certain subset of tools.
100%.
We use the Git repository for storing our stuff instead of everybody having their own sneaker net of code.
Yes.
Perhaps.
It makes your life easier as a Streamline team. You have less to think about because you just use the platform. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so within that platform, maybe there's enabling things. I don't know. I'm still curious what the enabling thing means.
You know what? Let's go look it up here, because I've got.
Check the Googles. Maybe the Googles know.
I've got.
Maybe your book knows.
Maybe my book knows. It's where is it? This is good feedback, actually, because I need this in the summary in my notes. I need. It's a good test that if we don't have this right away, then we need it.
You need to be able to just snap it up.
Team APIs, you do. Enabling purpose. Here, enabling teams, there's a whole section on it.
Okay.
It's a team of experts to help bridge capability gaps. Could be technical or product management. This comes from slides that I've seen. So
research
you would
team?
Facilitate. Maybe. So the way that they conceive of it, it's you would facilitate stuff for the product teams, like training, workshops, tool selection, framework selection. You'd pair it with people for examples. This sounds a lot like architecture, guidance on good practices. Architecture is probably the best example I can think of. So yeah, architecture might be the sort of canonical example of an enabling team, right?
Okay.
The simplest, most obvious one. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Continuous delivery, automated testing, design, UX, security, all of that stuff. Shared services is probably how a safe, scaled agile person would describe this.
I would agree.
Yeah.
There's a lot in my new world. There's a lot of enablement discussion. We're talking about enablement stories, which is a pull in, I think, from safe terminology, where they're saying, oh, we have regular
Yeah,
stories that have customer value, and then there's enablement stories that have internal system value, like they're helping you do something as a team, as opposed to a spike, which is just pure research.
totally.
So
Yeah, interesting. So go ahead. What's your next
no,
question?
that was just me breathing.
Okay. I'll let you breathe for a bit. What else is interesting about this? Streamline teams, enabling team, complicated subsystem team. Yeah, we probably should get CRISPR on what the differences are here. Complicated subsystem is a particular. I get the sense that there's not very many complicated subsystems out there. But let's say, for example, you've got, let's say you're Zencaster, right? And your product is the Zencaster podcast thing that we're using.
Okay.
Maybe the complicated subsystem that is the audio and video codecs, right? The stuff that compresses the audio and video to send it down and unstuffs it on your end, right? Maybe that whole sort of part of the issue. You can get the thing that brings your camera in, you can have the UI layer, that's fine, whatever. But the codec stuff to compress and decompress audio and video is just so fucking hard. You want a separate team that just does that, and they just publish it and you plug into it, right?
Okay. Possibly, I guess. Does that feel like that's what the book is saying?
It's my best guess at this point, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, is it the thing that defies standardization or defies generalization?
It defies, but it defies product teams easily being able to use it themselves, I think. Would be.
Because I would think complexity alone would not be the demarcation. If you can make sense out of it and understand what you're doing, if the skill set is so specialized, if there's so much complexity, and maybe complicated subsystem is something you're trying to get rid of. It almost feels like complicated subsystem is, well, we weren't able to make a nice clean stream out of it, and we weren't able to enable our way out of it, right? And we're not building a standard platform, so there's still this pile of ugly stuff that we still have to support. And
I think that sounds exactly right. Yeah.
You get to be the ugly stuff team.
Totally. And if we could get rid of you, we would, but we have to compress the video and uncompress it. We can't get away from it. So, and it's too complicated. Just dump it on a product team. So, Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Hey, congratulations. You have limitless value.
And by the way, did you notice we found our way back to cognitive load there inadvertently, because what you said was it's just too complicated to deal with. So that's why they shunted off. It's that same big pattern, right? This team has too much to think about. Get rid of some of it.
Yeah. And then there's organizations that have learned to tolerate the complicated subsystem, right? That they even acknowledge that this is a crazy thing that we should not be expending cycles on. We have no choice but to expend cycles on, because nobody is willing to talk through what it means to get rid of it, which is where consultants come in handy. Because we come into an organization and we excel at pointing at the big ugly elephant in the room and going, "Did you know there's an elephant over there?" Just saying.
Whose baby is this?
And they're all going,
angle?
Shh, we don't speak of the elephant. How can you not look at it? Look at it. It's huge.
Yeah. The elephant's eating half your yearly revenue. We need to talk about it at some point. Yeah. Do you have any examples of that, Mike?
About the a true example of the elephant?
Well, without.
Well, DevOps tends to be an elephant. I mean, when we were at a common client of the past, we had conversations about the deployment side of things. And we're saying, well, we're helping these teams get faster, but deployment is staying the same. And we are told we're not, that's outside of our scope.
Yeah.
Like, well, it can be outside of our scope, but it's going to slow you down. The theory of constraints is that's your new constraint. We've
Yep.
removed this one.
And the
Now,
whole system is worthless until you unblock that, or
yeah,
it's the whole system is being limited by that. So go do something else, but it's waste if you
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so somebody's got to do it. I had a one-on-one with a team member who is one of those subject matter experts that everybody's always after. And people will say, look, you need to cross train other people. You need to share what you know so other people can share the load.
Mm-hmm.
And they look at it and say, all right, so you handed me this problem. I look at the problem and I think, what do I need to do to enable Matt to do this? I need to expend energy writing this down. I need to walk him through it. I got to do all this stuff. And if I add up all the time I'm going to spend doing that compared to the relatively small amount of time it will just take me to do it.
Yeah, but that doesn't scale though, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's getting over that mindset. Right.
Hey, what a great candidate for an enabling team, by the way.
Okay. Explain.
Well, you just said that this person is an SME. I don't know why they didn't think about this before. So this person has vast specialized knowledge that very few other people have,
Mm-hmm.
and that other people need,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, that's what the enabling team is for, is to show up to the platform team as they need them, maybe just on Tuesday, whatever, walk them through the thing, pair with them on code examples, explain the architect, whatever, right? But unblock them. Yeah.
Yeah. And ironically, the team that he's a part of, they labeled it as to use your parlance. They're a stream-aligned team, except they're really an enablement team, because what they do is provide support for all those other teams. So this is an API team. Okay. So they write the interfaces to tools so you don't have to. But we would like the streamlined teams to be able to do that. When they can, right? Because then the teams are able to create complete value. The API, and without bringing the API team into the picture. But sometimes the API team is the only people who can do something, or they're better suited to doing it. You seem like you want to clarify.
Yeah, I guess I can't believe I'm going to say cognitive load again. But does doing the product stuff and the API stuff, is that fit? Is that a properly sized amount of stuff for the streamline team? Or because if it's too much, then you want to break it out.
Well, okay, so maybe maybe I'm just unfamiliar with the distinction yet, but I would think new APIs, API team would do. Modification to existing APIs, API team may not have to do. How about that?
Maybe. So there's this whole thing of like, how do you, so if you go into a place that needs this approach, right? There's a whole, one of the first things you do is you figure out, you classify the teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you say, this team is going to own this part of the architect. One of the foundational things is each team owns something, right? It's a part of the code. It's a subsystem. It's a capability.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is you'd use domain-driven design, right, to find the sort of natural flat fracture planes to take this whole system, split it up into subparts, and assign teams to own the subparts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a domain-driven design question to say, is a natural flat fracture plane to say old APIs go to the stream-aligned team, new API work goes to an enabling team. It's an interesting question. I think
I think it actually was the other way around, but
my guess is that all APIs should be owned by one team, though, because it's the same kind of thing and the same kind of architect.
Well, yeah, but now you've created a dependency, so now you got a red thread between two pieces of work, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to get one without the other, and now you got to worry about alignment.
It would probably be a platform team, though, wouldn't it? I mean, the set of APIs could be considered a platform, right? It'd be a thing that the
Maybe.
team's building on
Okay,
top
so
of.
let's play with that for a little while. So let's say they are the platform. The API team is your platform. Um, same. Yeah,
Right?
I don't
It's
know where I'm
interesting.
going,
It's fine.
but we could. I mean, we could keep rearranging deck chairs.
Whatever. We're
But I
recording
don't.
the whole thing and we can edit.
Yeah,
So
but I don't know if we're getting closer to a solution on this or to a point. Where was I going with that? The person with the cognitive
APIs.
load, API person needing to share what he knows, and he could just do it quicker himself. And this isn't even to share that knowledge with an outside team. This is within his own team to enable other people to be able to do it too.
I
Right.
see.
Right. So he is coming to the realization that he needs to be able to enable this within. So this is an enablement action within your platform team where,
Interesting.
right. So
Yeah.
we've got all this work we need to do. Hey, API team, here's something you need to work on. Hey, expert on the API who we've been turning to for ages. Here's another one. And Mr. Cognitive Overload just kind of, you know, what do I do? Do I stop what I'm already doing? Do I take on that? What's my priority? Task switch, task switch, task switch,
Yeah.
head explode, and then things go bad. So it's like, no, you should help somebody else learn to do this stuff. Well, how much time is it going to take me to do that? Is there an understanding that if I'm going to spend time mentoring and training, that is someone accounting for that? And I have to come back and say, well, that app, first of all, the outside world shouldn't know that you're doing that.
Why would they
The
care?
world
Yeah.
outside the team does not care how the work gets done. They should have zero visibility into who's working on what, how the team is arranging their work. You guys should have the freedom to say, this is a good opportunity for me to train you on how to do this. So next time one of these comes in, you can do it or I can do it, but it doesn't have to be me. Right.
Totally.
And like, yeah, but in the past, we have been individually rewarded for how much throughput we do, and this is going to reduce my throughput. Therefore, I am going to be judged harshly. And it's like, no, we're getting away from that. We're not doing individual contribution anymore. We're doing overall stream contribution or overall, right? That's what matters.
Yes.
So we need to build time into your schedule so you have time, or into the team's schedule so that there is time for you to pass on what you know. And we should celebrate that. We should call out. Sprint review sounds like a good place to say, and we did these enablement activities this time. Not only did we deliver all this value, we've also expanded our potential for the future, like to be able to do more things. So
it's one of those things that I've talked about, the idea of the agile operating system versus the organizational operating system, and how there can be these kind of the conflict you just gave is the perfect example of you're trying to get collaboration within a team, but people are like, if I do that, I'm not going to get my boat. So I'm just going to focus on my stuff. And so it's just not compatible.
Yeah. And then you go and you talk the person off the ledge. You say, this is for your own good. Trust me, you're going to be calmer at this. But then there's this little thing that you have to be mindful of, because you may have just triggered this. We're taking away the thing that makes you special. Right. Which we're not. But
if they think about it that way, it's as good as true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, fine, I'll cross train, but I won't teach them everything I know. I'm going to hold back on a few things just so I can still be a key.
So you need really sophisticated leadership, right? Management, right? To coach that person. Not in any of the agile stuff, but like, this is your job is to upskill and make people awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to reward you if you do that, but I'm not going to reward you for hoarding knowledge.
I was actually pretty happy with myself, because when we were having that conversation, I'm like, okay, I want to steer clear of triggering that impulse. Even if this person isn't inclined to have that impulse, I don't want to trigger it inadvertently. And so it was the way that I approached the phrasing, and it was along the lines of, as one of the senior developers on this team, you have the privilege. Did I say the privilege? You have the
distinct and high honor.
You have the awesome responsibility to help the next generation learn to be more like you. Like you can take all these young impressionable minds and teach them the things they need to know to be successful in this organization, and you get to do that.
This smells like Daniel Pink to me.
Does it? I don't know where I got it from. I get it from a lot of places.
I just mean like purpose, right? That's a high purpose to train the next generation and you leave your legacy through them, and
and then you
as opposed to more money.
Yeah, and then by opening up the capability for other people to do what you currently do, you open the door for yourself to learn to do even more things.
You prepare yourself for the next level yourself.
Yeah,
totally. So. Yep, this is the way. Okay, well, that I guess that was.
That's the end of this agile thing.
What's the sample? What did it say?
This agile thing. Here's this agile thing.
That's the end of this agile thing.
Here's this agile thing.